afraid of failing, you won't get very far.
The company is hurting, laying off workers.
One of Silicon Valley's brightest stars may soon be history.
10 years, by sheer force of will, he made the personal computer industry follow his direction.
Apple's Masterplan. In 1997, Apple was on the verge of bankruptcy. Today, it's one of the most valuable companies in the world. And can you believe that this dramatic turnaround was due to one single decision? The decision that changed everything and set the stage for the most revolutionary era of technology. In this video, we're going to dive deep into Apple's rise from a garage startup to a trillion-dollar company. And if you believe this is going to be just another documentary, you are thoroughly mistaken, because how Apple took over is no less than a story full of twists and turns and a whole lot of drama. And if you're in for a ride, once upon a time, there were two friends, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, with two extraordinary brains and an extraordinary dream to turn their lives around. These two, along with the easily forgotten Ronald Wayne, founded Apple in Steve Jobs' parents' garage. Ronald Wayne, an experienced businessman and engineer, played a really brief but crucial role in Apple's initial days. He drew up Apple's first partnership agreement, designed the first company logo, and wrote the original operation manual. However, soon he realized that once the company soared, he would be limited to a documentation role only under the shadow of the younger founders. So he sold his 10% stake in the company to the two Steves for merely $800 and took off. And that decision will go down as one of the worst financial decisions in tech history. Anyway, back to Apple. Wozniak was the engineering genius, and Jobs was the visionary, the salesman, the one who could make you believe in dreams. In short, he was good with numbers and words. But why would the geniuses name their company after a fruit? There are many theories regarding Apple's brand name and its origin. Some say it was inspired by Eve's bite out of the apple, or the story of nymphs gaining immortality after eating the golden apple, or the father of modern computing, Alan Turing's death by eating a poisoned apple. But the truth is that Steve Jobs named the company Apple simply because he liked the fruit. He was on a fruitarian diet and suggested the name to Wozniak after visiting an apple orchard. Plus, Apple would come before Steve Jobs' workplace, Atari in the phone book, which was a nice bonus. The first product they came up with was Apple I. It was an 8-bit motherboard-only personal computer, and it quite literally was just a motherboard. A supplied composite monitor and a keyboard were required to make it work. And as much as they wanted it to be, it wasn't a real groundbreaking invention. Plus, it was not user-friendly, so it didn't really take off. But it definitely was the start of something. The real breakthrough came in 1977 with the launch of Apple II. Both the Steves had learned from their mistakes. So this time, instead of selling motherboards, they came up with a fully assembled computer, which supported color graphics as well. While it wasn't the first computer with color capabilities, it was the first mass-produced personal computer to make color graphics widely accessible. This helped set it apart from the competitors at the time. It was a hit, and by 1993, they sold almost 5 million units. It was Apple's first big success and played a huge role in making personal computers popular. While the company was soaring high on Apple II's success, it went public, making many investors rich. The success also gave Jobs enough confidence to think he was unstoppable. Spoiler, he wasn't. With its newfound achievements, Apple set its sights on revolutionizing personal computing. They had found their niche. Xerox had developed a graphical user interface, or GUI concept, but they didn't have the right direction to commercialize it effectively. Steve Jobs was fascinated by this invention and saw potential, so he decided to bring it to the masses. The first attempt, Lisa, was launched in 1983. It was an ambitious but overpriced failure. The features sure were groundbreaking, but the price tag was budget-breaking. Not everybody could buy a $10,000 computer. Hence, the sales were not as high as Apple had expected. But they still didn't lose hope. They refined their vision and came up with another invention in 1984, the Macintosh. This time, they put a little extra effort into marketing their product. With a now famous Super Bowl commercial directed by Ridley Scott, Apple introduced the Mac as a bold new choice. With this, they challenged the old way of doing things and took on the tech giant IBM. The Macintosh was sleek, innovative, and ahead of its time. It introduced a user-friendly interface and a mouse, making it accessible to even the non-techies. However, despite its innovations, the Mac struggled in the market due to high costs, limited software support, and underwhelming performance. On the outside, it seemed perfect, but on the inside, it had its flaws. Just like Apple, on the outside it appeared like a thriving tech company. Internally, it was plagued with a power struggle. Steve Jobs sure was a brilliant guy, but he was notoriously difficult to work with. He clashed with CEO John Sculley, whom he had recruited from Pepsi. The difference in their vision led to a dramatic showdown, and Jobs was forced out of the company in 1985. What happens when a tech company loses its visionary and starts making random business decisions? Chaos. Apple in the 1990s was a masterclass of what not to do as a tech company. It was directionless, and cracks began to show in its dominance. The company launched an excessive number of confusing Mac models, and they were all the same except for a few minor differences. They started favoring quantity over quality, and we all know how that ends. In 1993, the Newton PDA was launched. It was an early attempt at a personal digital assistant and one of Apple's most ambitious projects. Think of it as a primitive form of an iPad. The Newton PDA had handwriting recognition software, which would allow users to write directly on the screen, and the device would convert it into text. No more typing. Leave it to the PDA to understand your illegible writing. In theory, it was an amazing venture, whereas in practice, the technology was a joke. It was so unreliable that it became a meme even before meme culture prevailed. It was mocked in pop culture, especially in The Simpsons. It was a failure. Not just a technical one, but a symbol of Apple's fall from grace. It represented Apple's broader struggles in that era, and they all centered around the poor execution of brilliant ideas. Had the technology of Newton's PDA been flawless, Apple's shares would have skyrocketed. Meanwhile, Microsoft was eating Apple up. They came up with Windows 3.0 and Windows 95, which offered a GUI experience inspired by the Mac. As soon as they were launched, they dominated the market mainly because they offered the same technology as Mac, available on cheaper machines. Apple, the company that was once an innovator, was now an underdog struggling to stay relevant. By 1996, Apple was bleeding money. It was cycling through CEO after CEO like a failing sitcom. They were looking at a very real possibility of bankruptcy. The company had lost over $1 billion that year, and industry insiders were already writing the story of Apple's decline. The company that once envisioned becoming the future was soon to be lost as another relic of Silicon Valley. But then, whether by a twist of fate or a change of heart, a decision was made, and that decision breathed new life into the dying company. Gil Amelio, Apple's CEO at the time, made the decision to buy Next, the company Steve Jobs founded after leaving Apple. Apple acquired Next for $429 million, not just for its software, but to bring Jobs back to the company. The software became the foundation for Mac OS, and that was not the only perk of the acquisition. Steve Jobs was back at Apple and was about to hit the high tides again. As soon as Steve was back, he wasted no time in making some very necessary cuts. The first one was Gil Amelio. Gil was ousted, and Jobs reclaimed his throne. Then he slashed Apple's bloated product line from dozens of models to just a handful. The unnecessary variations and failed experiments were discarded. The chaotic lineup of confusingly similar computers was replaced with a streamlined approach. Consumer and professional models in desktop and laptop categories were prioritized. This not only simplified marketing, but also cut production costs and allowed Apple to focus on innovation. Then, owing to his unpredictable nature, Steve Jobs struck a deal with his company's longtime arch nemesis. Microsoft invested a total of $150 million, which helped Apple survive its financial struggles. Contrary to popular belief, it was not a bailout, but a strategic move to end years of legal dispute. Plus, Bill Gates could see potential in Steve Jobs' vision, and the deal was a win-win for both the tech giants. Then, in 1998, in an attempt to reinforce the company's vision, Steve Jobs launched a product with exceptional hardware and software innovations. It was the iMac, a colorful, all-in-one computer designed to make computing fun again. As expected, it was an instant success, selling millions of units and putting Apple back in the spotlight. But Jobs wasn't done. In 2001, Apple launched the legendary iPod, a device that changed the music industry forever. It was the dream of high schoolers at the time, the ultimate hall pass to sit with the cool kids. With its sleek design and the ability to hold thousands of songs in your pocket, it made CD players look archaic. Then, in 2003, Apple introduced the iTunes Store, which made it easier than ever to buy music legally. Not to mention, it also killed Napster in the process. But the real revolution came in 2007. Enter the iPhone. iPhone was the device that redefined what a smartphone could be. At its unveiling, Steve Jobs famously described it as a widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communicator. The audience erupted in applause, and the hype only grew. When the iPhone hit the market, it was met with overwhelming demand. Apple sold over 1 million units in 74 days. Apple had not only caught up with its competition, but it had also left them in the dust. The combination of a sleek touchscreen, intuitive software, and the App Store made the iPhone a cultural and technological phenomenon. It set the stage for Apple's dominance in the smartphone era. Then, the inevitable happened. Steve Jobs passed away in 2011, leaving behind his tech empire to Tim Cook. After the founder's sad demise, many wondered if Apple could maintain the same momentum under Tim. While the new founder lacked the OG's talent for putting on a great show, he still proved to be an excellent strategist. He focused on supply chain efficiency, global expansion, and services. Under his leadership, Apple rose to success like never before. He had proved that Steve Jobs' Apple was in good hands. In August 2018, Apple hit a market value of $1 trillion. It was the first company to reach that milestone. In the third quarter of 2018, Apple reported a revenue of $53.3 billion, marking a 17% increase compared to the same quarter in 2017. And the sales were dominantly driven by continued strong sales of the iPhone. And when a product is making more money than expected, why not introduce its updated versions every year? So Apple did just that. It launched the iPhone X, the new and advanced iPhone, the one Apple had expected to have skyrocketed sales. But it missed the mark. The sales were not even near the expected number. This was not due to any technical flaws, but due to the ongoing trade war between China and the USA. This was the first real blow after the company's rise. The company lost $400 billion in market value. Following this jab at the company's values, Tim Cook introduced dramatic changes in his strategy. Rather than just introducing new gadgets, he started introducing services like Apple TV Plus, Apple credit cards. And that was exactly what the company needed. The services started paying off. Despite increased political disputes, Apple thrived in 2019. Once again, Tim Cook proved his leadership skills by steering Apple through uncertainty with success. Then 2020 came, and the world shut down. COVID came and it ruined everything. The manufacturing units shut down. Life was unpredictable and people were freaking out. But eventually, when the reality of the situation settled in, people started finding ways to navigate through the lockdown life. The world started operating again, but on Zoom. Technology became a necessity and everyone wanted new devices. That is when Apple came to the rescue. Apple was already on top of the tech companies, so if anyone were to invest in a new laptop, why not a MacBook? As a result, the sales skyrocketed. And one way or another, COVID benefited Apple. It not only survived the pandemic, it came out even stronger, leading the tech world into a new era. By early 2022, Apple became the first company to hit a $3 trillion valuation. And now, in the first quarter of 2025, Apple reported a revenue of $124.3 billion, marking a 4% increase year over year. It has expanded into product lineup with notable releases like the M4 MacBook Air, iPhone 16e, iPad updates, and smart home devices. In short, Apple has dominated every world. It comes with a new product and knows how to make it a need for the world. Its journey is a testament to the power of vision, resilience, and a little bit of drama. And the conclusion of this whole video is that year after year, they cry Apple's doom is near, and every single time Apple proves them wrong. It is the master of comebacks. As long as it keeps reinventing itself, we'll all keep lining up for the next shiny gadget we didn't know we needed. That was it for today's video. Thank you for watching. Which Apple product do you think is the greatest of all time? Tell us in the comments below. Don't forget to like and share. For more such videos, subscribe to our channel, and we'll catch you in the next one.